We're finally there. If you tuned in earlier, you know that what we've been setting up today is a series of tastings on some various malt products that have been shipped recently by one of our sponsors, Mecca Great Estate Malts. And going to compare it against a Great Western 2-row Pils. But real quick, just as a recap, in case you've been doing something else with your Memorial Day weekend other than coming and listening to me, I don't know why, but hey, I assume some of you want to go grill a piece of corn or a hamburger. Brees last year published a really interesting technique about how to do a malt evaluation at home. They walked you through some of the basic things like, you know, the Congress mash that's out there, which is the standard way of evaluating malt. You know, you basically a certain sort of grind with a certain sort of stirring at a certain sort of temperature with a certain amount of time. You let that happen, very fine crush. You steep that and then drain it away, and you evaluate the wort that you get out of it. And that's how you generate numbers like your Lintner power, your color, the amount of extract that you get out of a coarse or a fine grind. You know, these are just those kinds of things, right? You know, and this is a very, very specific technique. You can find all this sort of stuff in the ASBC journals. And remember, science, a lot of times science is really about you and I agreeing on the process, so that when you and I talk, we know that we did the same thing and our numbers might actually mean something the same. But for you and I, the home brewer, and not the scientist, well, sometimes that stuff's just not very practical. We don't have the tools for it. So Brees last year published what I thought was kind of a nifty technique to basically say, okay, here's a process, and all it requires is a coffee grinder, a funnel, some coffee filters, and a thermos. That's it. And you can do your malt evaluation. And again, remember, the whole idea is that what you want to do is you want to sort of speed up the learning process, figure out a new ingredient without taking a risk, so you don't have to go brew a full batch of beer. You know, you don't have to do 5 gallons in a whole day. You can take an hour, figure out something about a malt, and then decide about how that's going to work into a recipe. After all, somebody who's a big brewery, they're not going to risk thousands of dollars on a test batch just because, you know, they want to try out a new ingredient. They need a way to do this, well, at less risk. So, pardon me. The basic process, if you missed earlier, you weigh out 55 grams of your malt. Nice little gram weighted scale, so you can tell 55 grams. Get 55 grams malt, husk and everything. Throw that into a coffee grinder. This is just yield standard Krupp's coffee grinder with a fine little blade in it, not your fancy little, burr grill that you're going to use for your coffee if you're that sort of person. Put your malt in there, put it in here, grind it up for 30 seconds. Shake, 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 30 seconds. Keep that going. Nice little timer. What you end up with is malt flour. If you go look at the Experimental Brewing Instagram, you'll see some of the pictures of what the flour looked like. After that, what I've had doing is you're supposed to have your water at a very specific temperature. If you're a brewer, this is a standard thing. We know you've got to go hit a specific temperature. So the Brees process specified 65 degrees Celsius. So what I actually did was I actually used one of my sous vide heaters to go and heat up my water to 65 degrees, so I knew I had it exactly right. Then after you get your water to 65 degrees, you take 50 grams of that malt flour with the husk and everything else. You put it into something like a mason jar. The Brees process actually says go put it into a nice thermos, but I'm doing multiples of these, and I only have one of these. So mason jars are cheap. 50 grams of flour, 400 milliliters of water, cap, shake for 20 seconds so you properly hydrate everything. You know it's all wet. And then what I did was I put it into another sous vide bath because I have 2 of these machines. So I had this one sitting also at 65. So this went in, let it sit for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, pulled it out and actually used a number 4 coffee filter. I actually used a couple of these, and I'll talk about this. In a funnel, drained that into another mason jar. After I collected a little bit, I used the runoff to actually rinse out the residue out of the mason jar that I had already, and then kept filtering. Now, one thing I would change. I did this with a funnel. That funnel is the wrong size for these particular filters. And the other problem is these filters, the way they work is all that surface area along the side, right? You know, so you get your stuff in here. funnel doesn't allow you to drain out properly this way because this ends up plugging the bottom. So what I'm going to do for the next round is I actually have a couple of the stand filters for these things. If you're going to make coffee, I'm going to use those to do the next round because I think that will be easier and drain faster. But after everything's gotten drained, just collected it here in a couple of mason jars, and I screwed up the Lamonta, and we'll talk about that in a bit. They've now cooled down because you're supposed to do the tasting at room temperature. When you think about it, that's going to be closer to how you're going to drink your beer. So let me just walk you through real quick. I'll show you a couple of samples. First one. This is the Great Western 2-row, just Pilsner malt. Very pale, very straw. Let's see if we can get that in a better light. You can see a little bit of haze. This is not supposed to be an evaluation for clarity, right? Because this is a speed process. If we want to take a little more time, yeah, we could get these very, very clear. But this is what we got here. That's the Great Western 2-row. And then we go into the Mecca grade malts. This is the Mecca grade Peleton. It's actually just a hair yellower and lighter than the Great Western Pils. So this is a very pale malt. Kind of nice, right? We'll get into the taste in a moment. Then here we have the Lamonta malt from Mecca grade. This one's going to be extra hazy because this one I kind of messed up the filtering on. I kept breaking the filters. I'm sorry. Seth, I actually like this malt, so don't worry. But this one's a little bit hazy. Not New England hazy, just malt hazy. And you can see, again, darker, right? This gets into kind of that more of that mauve color that you want. Yeah, that Maris Otter. And then finally, this is by far and away the most dramatic of them all. This is the Mecca grade Melitious. I think I'm saying that right. Probably not. I don't know. I will always screw up names. This is Mecca grade's Munich malt. And you can see this extracted a bunch of color. And that's kind of nifty, right? You know, just a 15-minute process and a filtering. So, let's do the important part. Because, hey, visuals are one thing, but they're not everything about malt. So we'll go ahead. We'll start. Again, this is the Great Western 2-row Pilsner. And I guess I'm doing everything out of B&A glasses because I have a ton of these. So congratulations, Brewing Network. I've apparently bought a number of glasses from you guys before. All right, first things, I get that sort of grass, hay, a little bit of butter, definitely a fresh dough, like, you know, nice bread, right? You know, because, I mean, that's what this is. Definitely get that, again, grass, straw. Okay, clean, crisp, fresh pizza dough. Not a lot of complication to it, but I mean, there is definitely. If you told me before, hey, you're going to get some malt out of a 2-row Pilsner, I would probably said, probably not. But this one, I'm getting those very nice malt characters, which is rather impressive for a domestic malt, particularly one as big as Great Western. Definitely also some nice sugar in here. I think I'm going to get a sugar buzz doing this. All right, now let's move on to the Mecca grades. This is the Peleton. Again, this is supposed to be their equivalent to what we just had from Great Western. So again, we get grass, we get hay. This one has more of a cracker edge to it. Still also some of that straw. Okay, here I'm getting more sweetness. This almost gets into the graham cracker type of sweetness. A little bit less crisp, but still, I could see this making a really wonderful base for something that you want to kind of have a little bit more malt character to. You know, in terms of, like, if you think of that 2-row Pils as being sort of your base, I want to make an American lager, this one I almost would say has more oomph to it than that did, right? So this has a little bit more of a graham cracker malt bread character to it than the Great Western 2-row. Okay, so that's the Peleton. Remember Peleton? That's the 2-row Pils. Now I go into the Lamonta, which is the pale ale, or the Maris Otter sort of equivalent. And again, This one's going to be a little bit hazy because I told you guys I screwed up the filtering because, hey, first time doing this. Okay, none of the grain and grass, or really the grassy hay sort of notes. More of a whole wheat type dough. So more bread, more body, just even in the nose, you know, just more like oomph right there, you know, just, hi, I'm here. Okay, and so remember I said the Peleton came off with some graham cracker. This comes off to me more with pie crust. Pie crust baked cookie. So a little bit more power behind what I think, you know, that malt character is supposed to be. There's obviously a fair amount of sugar in here because, again, this is all fresh, you know, no fermentation. I do get a little bit of sort of an oaty character. I'm going to assume that's because of the bad filtering that I did. Sorry. But again, this gives me pie crust and baked cookie. So kind of nice. And again, kind of in that Maris Otter thing. But I think Maris Otter goes more biscuit. This goes more pie crust. So yeah, I could see this making a great IPA. All right, and then the last one, and the one that we said before was the most dramatic. This is the Melitious. They're Munich. You can see that is a definite different color. Even the Lamonta, which is supposed to be their darker ale malt, well, yeah, not quite, right? So if this is a Munich, okay, this is brown bread. If you're from the New England area or have New England roots, you'll know what I'm talking about. B&M canned brown bread that you steam after taking it out of the can, and the bread has the lines of the can on it, right? Molasses, raisin, bread to the nth degree, brown sugar. And a definite strong toast note to it. Oh, and I mean, yeah, that carries right into the palate. Again, we're on. Take the best Melba toast type crispy bread type thing that you can think of, but instead of obnoxiously bland and sweet like Melba toast is, give it a bunch of power behind it. Give it a bunch of that breadiness. Give it like somebody made molasses Melba toast. It's exactly that. It's that big sort of thing, you know, chewy, raisiny. It's like, you know, somebody put some grape jelly on that. Yeah, I know, Mom, I'm sorry. You're the reason I know brown bread so well. And this really is in that same sort of realm. I think if you threw some raisins in here, you'd be relatively pleased. So, again, I mean, wow, just, I mean, I know like Weyermann Munich pretty well. I know the Briess Munich pretty well, and those give you some that gives you some of that behind it. This, I mean, this is a punch up on that. So, again. Yeah, just so much more. I would almost say, you know, I sometimes tell people you can use Munich and you can use Vienna to make a 100% that sort of beer, right? I'm going to have to try it with this because I would almost worry that this is too much power in that sense. Like, this needs to kind of be cut a little because it is almost a super Munich. So, there you go. That's the Melitious from Mecca Great Estate Malts. yeah, I mean, that's definitely the one that hits the hardest out of all of these malts, which is not a big surprise. I do have coming up, once I get the new brew filters, we're going to do the other Mecca grade malts that I have my hands on, which are their wheat malt, their rye malt. They have a Vienna equivalent called Verona. And then they also have, instead of doing a crystal malt, they have what they call a caramelized toffee malt. And they call that one Opal 44. And that was the other one when I tasted them just raw, just popped them in my mouth and chewed on them for a little bit. Really popped out at me because the character is different enough that it makes you go, wow, okay. So there you go. That's a quick demonstration on doing the sort of quick abbreviated malt evaluation sort of cycle. I did this here in a slightly different modified way because we had all these ones to try. We still have more to try, so we'll try those soon. But again, all you really need in order to be able to do this is a coffee grinder, some coffee filters, and a way to keep everything hot for long enough. So if you don't want to do a sous vide bath, you obviously can just go buy a thermos. But I had the sous vide bath on hand, so why not do it? Now, the other point, of course, was the whole time I'm doing this, Andy Ziskin is out there going, hey, Andy, or Andy's going, hey, Drew, you should have a beer while you're doing this. Well, I didn't want to have a beer until I actually finished tasting the malts because I didn't want everything to get in the way. So, I think George Mahoney is out there. I saw you log in earlier. So, George, thank you for the opener. I still have this, and it's still my day-to-day opener. So, what is this, Affligem? So, thank you, George. And to Andy, I figured, well, I'm me, so I'm going to go ahead and pop open a bottle of Merryweather, which is from Perennial Artisan Ales, in collaboration with the Commons Brewing Company in Portland, Oregon. And if you listen to the podcast, you know that a couple episodes ago we talked to the folks at Commons, just to, well, you know, because we're in Portland. Why not? They're great. So I'm going to have that while everybody else is having Memorial Day. You guys want to do a little tasting? We can. Of course, if you're going to do a Saison, you need to have a proper Saison glass. So, I think I have about 6 of these, thanks to Lucky Baldwin's. So, just... Oh, that's pretty and pale. And fluffy. Yep. So, very lively. This one is actually from last July, but it is, they say here, take on a classic Saison in true collaborative fashion. They use the respective Saison strains in a 50-50 blend. The beer is dry hopped with Hallertauer and bottle conditioned. So there you go. Nice little Saison here at 5.5%, which is even proper gravity. Yay. So, anyway, again, cheers everybody. I hope that you're having a good Memorial Day. I hope that you're remembering the appropriate folks on Memorial Day weekend here. I hope that you're also having fun and making sure that you have plenty of beer, because after all, that's part of the reason for some of the sacrifices that we've asked for people in the past. In the meanwhile, if you like this sort of tasting that I've done here with the malt and whatnot, let me know. Tell me what else you want me to taste. Is there another malt out there that we need to explore? There are different ways of doing this with other malts as well, so I'm happy to do that. I think this is kind of a fun thing to do. And, yeah, in the meanwhile, I hope everybody's having a good one. And let's see how this tastes. Nice perfuming nose. Yeah, don't go buy this. It's horrible. Leave it all for me. I'll talk to you guys later.